Hello and welcome to my video, where I'm going to show you how to make a variety of pasta shapes out of felt. You can use these shapes to make brooches, magnets or other embellishments, or they can be used as play food. Just make sure you don't give them to any children who would try and eat them. To follow along, you'll need some yellow felt, maybe a couple of A4 sheets worth, a ruler, some fabric scissors, an iron and ironing board, a hand sewing needle and yellow thread, a disappearing or magic fabric pen, some pinking shears, glue that's suitable for felt, a toothpick, some bulldog clips, a rod or dowel of some description that's about 5mm in diameter if possible, and a small amount of stuffing. If you have a rotary cutter and cutting mat as well, they'll be very handy because they are so much neater and easier than just using scissors. Okay, so to make the penne pasta, you essentially need to make a tube. The first step is to cut a strip of felt that's 3cm wide. I just used the centimetre markings on my cutting mat to show me where to cut, but if you don't have that option, then just mark out the width with your disappearing fabric pen instead before you cut the strips. As you can see, I did this with a rotary cutter and ruler, but you could use scissors instead. If you want to try and add ridges to your pasta for extra detail, the best way I found to do this is to use your iron to draw parallel-ish lines along the length of the felt strip, whilst it's on your ironing board. Just be very careful when you do this, don't use steam, and keep your fingers well out of the way of the heat. If you have some kind of rod or dowel to help you shape your tube, that would be useful. Just make sure you don't mind getting glue on it. I personally used a knitting needle. You want to curl the felt strip around the dowel to make it easier for you then to apply glue on one edge and join the long edges together. If there are any gaps, use a toothpick to apply glue in those areas so the seam is nicely joined. Once the glue has dried, you can then cut the tubes into pieces. First, make a diagonal cut at one end that's 1cm across. Then make another diagonal cut, again 1cm across, 4cm along the tube. And keep repeating this all the way along. And that's your faux penne pasta completed. Next, for the fusilli pasta, first cut strips of felt 1cm wide. Attach a bulldog clip at each end and twist the strip as much as you can whilst keeping it straight. Take it over to your ironing board and steam the twisted felt a few times. Make sure you only hold the iron just above the felt and don't press down on it. You don't want to flatten the felt. Once these spirals have cooled and dried, you can then cut them into pieces about 4cm long. Obviously, this is just an approximation of fusilli pasta, as the shape of the real thing would be impossible to recreate. So I basically just went with how I've seen homemade fusilli pasta made in online videos. Okay, so now we'll make some fettuccine, which is very simple because you just need to cut 5mm wide strips, like so. For linguine, you would instead cut 4mm strips, for tagliatelle you would cut 7mm strips, and for pappardelle you would cut strips about 12mm wide. And that's the fettuccine completed. And once you've cut enough of them, you can make a very loose knot and create a pasta nest. Then for farfalle or bow tie pasta, start by cutting 3.5cm strips. Then cut these strips every 2.5 centimeters. Use pinking shears to create zigzag edges on the short sides only. Then you need to stitch in the centre of each rectangle. So first feed a length of yellow thread into the eye of your sewing needle. Fold the rectangle in half twice to find the centre point, and take your needle in and out of the felt at this point. Pull most of the thread through, then tie a double knot to fix the thread to the felt. Cut off the excess thread. Then concertina the rectangle, making 3 even lengthwise folds, then stitch these into position. Just take your needle in and out of the felt, staying in the middle of the rectangle throughout. Make sure to secure the thread at the end. To do this, I took the needle through the centre to the back, then went in and out of the felt to make a small stitch, pulled the thread until there was just a small loop, took the needle through that loop, and pulled it tight. You can repeat that again to make sure if you wish. Cut off the excess thread. And that's one bow tie completed. Repeat this for all of the rectangles, and then you'll have something like this. Next, for the ravioli, cut pairs of square shapes which measure 6 centimeters along each edge. Hold each pair of squares together and cut all edges with the pinking shears. Then backstitch each pair together approximately 9mm from the edge, all the way around. To do this, first thread your needle, then knot the end of the thread onto the felt where you want to begin. So go in and out of the felt to make a small stitch, and then make a double knot with the thread. Then cut off the excess. If you don't know how to do backstitch, I have a video all about it, but you basically come up through the felt 1 stitch length away, then go back down where you originally brought the needle through. Then go forward 2 stitch lengths and come up. Go back 1 stitch length and go down. And repeat that over and over. Aim to make your stitches all a consistent length, perhaps 4 or 5mm long, and stop when you've just started stitching the last edge. You need to add a small amount of stuffing into the ravioli at this point before completing the backstitch. At the end, make sure to secure the thread on the back by again doing a small stitch, taking the needle through the loop twice, and tightening. Cut off the excess thread. And that's one raviolo completed. Then just repeat this process as many times as you wish. As you can see, I made 3 ravioli. And lastly, to make the tortelloni shapes, you'll once again need squares that are 6 centimeters along each edge. Place a small amount of stuffing in the centre of one of the squares. Thread your needle. Fold the triangle in half, like so, to encase the stuffing, and then backstitch along the 2 open edges to close the shape. I stitched maybe 5mm away from the edge and secured the thread at the beginning and the end. I then folded the points to the front so that they overlap and stitched these in position as well. I've chosen to have the neatest stitching on the outside of the shape, but you could choose to have it on the inside instead if you wish. The folding technique I'm using is the same technique I saw the pasta evangelists use on YouTube, but tortelloni are often made slightly differently, where the points are wrapped under the triangle rather than in front, so feel free to make them that way instead if you prefer. It's just the last stitching step that's a bit different. Repeat this process for each of the squares. And here you can see all of the pasta we've made. I found this a very fun project, and I think the result looks fairly accurate. I really hope you'll follow along at home, and thank you very much for watching.